Okay, hello and welcome. In this video we're going to take a look at how to create a function in SQL Server. Now you may see some code on the screen here, hopefully you can, and this is basically from a previous example where I created a table and I inserted some data, and we're just building on the same example. I'll leave some links in the description for the previous two videos which outlined how to create a table and how to insert some values into that table. So if I run the select statement, we can see, let me try that again. I think I hit the wrong button. It's a good start, isn't it? Let's click execute. You can see we've got some data here. Now I can't make this any bigger, so I'm going to copy with headers. I'm going to flip over to Excel. I'm going to paste it in, and as you can see we've got 3 columns, 5 rows. We've got an ID, which is the primary key, and we've got a key and we've got a value. So this table is to store config settings in. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to write a function in SQL Server where I give the function the key value, the key, and what I get back is the value. In this instance all of the values are 1 because it's just test data. I didn't take it too seriously, but we've got obviously keys 1 to 5, and then we've got a value. Okay, nice simple example on how to create a function in SQL Server. So let's go ahead and open a new window, and let's start creating our function. So start off with the create reserved word, and then we're going to put function. So create function. Now we want to give it a name. First thing I'm going to do, open and close square brackets. I always use square brackets for column names, schema names, and object names like function names, table names, stored procedure names, because if I want to use a reserved word, a lot of people will tell you not to. Whether you choose to or not is up to you, but me personally, I'm like, if I want to create a table and I want to call it something that's a reserved word, then I say too bad for the reserved word. I'm going to do it because that's what I want to do. So I use square brackets because if you use square brackets, you can basically call anything in SQL Server whatever you want without having to worry that you're using a reserved word. Hopefully that's clear. So I'm going to create it in the default schema DBO. Because I'm creating it in the default schema, I don't actually have to specify DBO, but I like to do it for consistency because I might want to change this at some point to something else. Okay, but for now we're going with DBO. Just in case you don't know what a schema is a bit like a folder to files. So obviously if you want to organize your files, you put them in different folders. In a database, in SQL Server, if you want to organize your tables or your stored procedures or your functions, you put them in different schemas. And a good thing about that is you can apply different permissions to those schemas, and it allows you to manage your database just a little bit better. I'll probably create another video at some point for schemas, so if you want to see that, stay tuned. But let's crack on then. So I'm going to call this function GetConfig. I think that makes sense. What do you think? I think so. So GetConfig. Now I want to pass in a parameter. So I'm going to do open and closed round brackets, and we have to use the @ symbol to specify the name of the parameter, and I'm going to put it as key. And then we need to give it a type, and it's going to be VARCHAR. Okay. And I'm going to stipulate that the VARCHAR is going to be no longer than 64 characters long. Now if I flip back to the table, you'll notice that that's exactly VARCHAR 64, exactly the same as the column I'm going to be searching for, because it wouldn't make sense to take in values, would it, that was bigger or smaller. Might as well take it in exactly the same. I could do if I wanted to, if I had some business logic for that. And well done for those that noticed I'd spelt that wrong. I could have made this a different size, but because I'm going to be writing a where clause specifically where we look for a specific key, I may as well make it the same, right? Doesn't make any sense to make it different. Okay, I'm happy with that, I think. Yeah, that looks good to me. And then we're going to do as. Okay. So this is where we said create function. We've specified a schema. We've specified the name of the function. We've specified that we're taking in a parameter. We've specified that parameter is called key, and it's a varchar, and it's 64 characters long. Okay, so then we say as, because now we're going to actually get into the good stuff. So let's start with a begin, and we're going to put an end in, and because I'm old school, I'm going to put a go in so that it'll execute this as a batch. Just in case you didn't know, the go statement is nothing more than a statement that is for SQL Server Management Studio, and it just tells SQL Server Management Studio to execute everything within the go statements as a batch. So it'll execute that against the SQL database. Just wanted to quickly cover that if you had any questions, and if you do have any questions, put them in the comment section below, and I will do my very best to get back to you. So what are we going to do? Right. So I'm going to basically let me just write this outside of the function. I want to write a select statement basically, right? And I want to select some data from, we're going to select it from dbo.config, okay? I'm going to give my config table an alias, because I always use aliases when I write my, my select statements. I think it looks cleaner and it helps me with IntelliSense. And I'm going to say where C dot, and we're looking for a key obviously. Now key's a reserved word, so I'm going to put it in brackets, and I'm going to say where the key is equal to something. So in this instance I'm going to say 1. Actually not 1, because my keys, if I go back and have a look, I've got key 1, key 2, so I'm going to say where it's equal to key 1, okay? And what am I going to select, I wonder? I'm only going to select the value. I don't want nothing else other than the value. So C dot value, okay? Let's have a look. All right, Visual Studio is happy with it. No red squiggly lines. Excellent. Let's run that and see if it works. It should do, and it does work. I don't know if you can see that, but essentially what we got back, let me go back to here, we got back a value 1. So what we've said is we've said select the value where the key is 1. So that worked perfectly. Now, so what I want to do is I want to use this select statement in my function because it's there or thereabouts. So let's paste it in. Now what you may notice is we've got a bit of a problem there, because what we're saying here is we're saying where it's key 1. Now obviously we don't want to say where it's key 1, we want to say where it's equal to the parameter. So that's quite simple. All we have to do is replace key 1 with the parameter. So nice and simple, right? Now what else do we need to do? Actually, you know something, I've just realised, because that squiggly line, I don't know if it was bothering you, but it was actually bothering me, and I've just realised why it's bothering me, because what I didn't tell it is I didn't tell it what this function is going to be returning. So a function returns something in SQL Server, okay? A store procedure does not have to return anything, but a function has to return something. So let's put in returns. So we have to basically tell SQL Server what we're returning. So what I'm going to put is I'm going to put returns, and then I'm going to put VARCHAR. Now, of course, don't forget, right? Don't forget we're returning the value. So it makes sense, does it not, to make it the same size? Yeah. So let's put VARCHAR 512. Great, I'm happy with that. Yep, I think I'm happy with that. So SQL Server is telling me quite aggressively with these red squiggly lines that I haven't returned anything, and that's because I haven't got round to it yet. Sometimes I wish SQL Server would have just a little bit more patience with me. But what we're going to do is, let me just quickly go through what we've got here, right? So we've got a create function statement, right? We're saying DBO schema, we're saying the function's called GetConfig, we're passing in one parameter which is called key, denoted by the @ symbol. We're saying it's VARCHAR 64, which just so coincidentally happens to match exactly what the key is in the table. We're saying that we're returning a VARCHAR 512 because obviously we're going to get the value, and that obviously happens to match precisely what the value is in the table in terms of type and length. And then we're saying as begin and end and go. And then in between the begin and end statement, that's where the real work happens. That's where we do what this function needs to do. So we're saying select the value, and I've missed actually the square brackets there. As I said before, I don't normally bother for aliases because I'm a little bit more mindful that when I'm creating my aliases to make sure they're not keywords. But likewise, if you really wanted to, If you really wanted to, you could put your aliases in square brackets as well, but even for me that might be potentially overboard, but I'll tell you what, let's run with it. Now the reason we've got a red squiggly line here is because we're not returning anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this entire line up in a open and closed round brackets, and I am going to then type the word return, and I'm going to hope that the red squiggly line disappears. Phew, that was lucky. So we've got no red squiggly lines, which at least tells us that hopefully, if we keep our fingers crossed, this will work. Let's run the pass. Okay, so SQL Server is telling us that everything looks good, so I'm happy if SQL Server Management Studio is happy. Just a quick one as well, if you don't have SQL Server Management Studio, you can download it for free. I've created a video, I'll leave a link in the description. And so let's go ahead and create this function, execute. And the function has been created. Well, that's awesome. If we have a look at the programmability folder and go into functions, if we have a little look in here, we can see that the function is present, dbo.config, and we can actually access it via here. We can see what parameters it takes in and all that kind of stuff. I tend to not use the GUI as much though, because you know I'm a coder at the end of the day, and I preferred coding rather than clicking on things. But you know, use whatever you prefer. So let's test it, right? So you're probably wondering, okay, you've created yourself a function, absolutely brilliant, but how do we test it? Well, let's have a look at how we test it. You can call a function in a select statement. How cool is that? So let's do select. Now we need to select the function. I could type it. I'm actually feeling lazy. I'm going to copy it. So select the function, and then we need to obviously pass it in what we're after. So the parameter. So open and close round brackets, not squiggly. And then I'm going to pass it in a value. So let's have a look at what values we've got. Let's go for key 3. Now we know it's going to come back with value 1. So let's do key 3. Moment of truth. Let's run it. And as you can see, possibly, if your resolution is good enough, we got back a value 1. What I'll do, just so that you can be sure we're getting back the right value, because obviously in my example they're all value 1, right? Which isn't superb, is it? It's not a very good test, is it? So let's go ahead and let's insert one more value into the database. Now I'm going to call this value 6, all right? And I'm going to give that value something completely different of test. So let me run that. Execute. Incorrect syntax because I had a comma on the end. Let's get rid of the comma. We don't need it because we're not inserting multiple rows. Let's run it. One row affected. Let's select the data from the table. Select. Let me just. I always find it hard to find the bit that moves this around. Right, and as you can see there, hopefully, if not, I'll paste it in here. We've now got an ID of 6, a key 6, and a test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call our function again, and I'm going to pass in key 6, and I'm going to run it, and fantastic, our function is working absolutely perfect. What we got back was the test. And what I'll probably do at this point, I'm just going to show you something, another little trick. That in a select statement, if you want to, you can call a function more than one time. Just like columns, you can call it as many times as you want. So let's get the value for 1 and 6. As you can see down there, we've got a value 1 and we've got test. And of course, you can give it a name as well as, and you can give your columns a name. It's just as test, as you know, another test. You may have noticed I accidentally typed it within the open and round brackets. So run that. You can see we've got two values there, test value 1, another test which has the value test in it. But a bit misleading here, because actually what all of the cool kids do these days is they don't name their columns as. What they do is they put them at the front and they put equals. That's in my humble opinion, the cleanest way of doing it. So tell me in the comment section below how you like to put your aliases in. I quite like doing my aliases like that. I think they look a little bit cleaner. So let me run that to make sure that it all works though. Hopefully it does, and it does, so works perfectly. Right, that wraps things up. I hope you found it useful. Enjoy creating your own functions. Let me know what functions you're likely going to be creating. If you've got any questions, you know what to do. Put them in the comment section below. I hope you found the video useful. If you did, hit that like button. If you want to see similar content to this in the future, go ahead and subscribe and make my day. And until next time, take care everybody.